Good afternoon to you all. I'm Lieutenant Kevin Petrus with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. We're here today to discuss an armed robbery incident that occurred in the Steel Creek Division over the weekend that was perpetrated by two young juveniles. Captain Jason Helton is the commander of the Steel Creek Division, and he's here to discuss the incident further. Captain.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Jason Helton. I'm the captain of the Steel Creek Division. Just want to highlight one of the cases we had this weekend and just setting it up and let you know this is something we deal with on a daily basis with our officers out there with juveniles. But this particular one took place Sunday morning around 8 a.m. in the Steel Creek Division in the 2100 block of Diamond Creek Circle. We had a female victim who was out walking in the parking lot, broad daylight, 8 o'clock in the morning, and two juveniles came up to her and asked her to use her phone. She did like the rest of us to do. She let them have their phone. Well, when she did that, they took off running with the phone. So she followed after them to get her phone back, and when she did, a 12-year-old juvenile pointed a gun in her face and tried to pistol whip her. At that point, she quit giving chase, and then they proceeded to a nearby apartment complex. Right. Our officers responded to that area. They knew, based on some witness descriptions, what was going on. They knew who the suspect apartment was. Our officers got a perimeter there. They contacted the mother based on the past history with that family, and once they contacted the mother, she was very cooperative. We were able to get the juveniles to come out. Ultimately, there was a 12-year-old and a 6-year-old. Yes, you heard me right, a 6-year-old with a 12-year-old brother involved in this crime where they had the firearm. The 6-year-old ended up giving us some information, and we were able to get that gun, which is pictured here on the screen. It's actually a BB gun. But if you look at it really, really closely, does that look like a BB gun to anybody? All right, let me paint a picture for you. What would happen if that female would have been armed? All right, we could have been dealing with something really, really tragic here. We could have been dealing with a 12-year-old who maybe lost their life, or even a 6-year-old. So think about that. Think about the consequences of it. That's why it was important to us to highlight this case today. Right? Like I said before, our officers are dealing with juveniles every single day. Property crimes, violent crimes, and when I say juveniles, I mean kids. I mean ages 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. And it seems like they just keep getting younger and younger. So a couple things just to highlight, right? Know where your kids are. I said this is 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning. Right? Know where your kids are, what they're doing. Know what's on their social media. All right? After looking at the investigation, this child had posed with a gun a couple days prior on social media. Right, so know what's on your kids' social media, what they're doing on their phone. Right, check in with your kids, talk to them, see who they're hanging out with. Those are really, really important things, right, to make sure they're on the right path. Victim in this case just finished working a night shift, thought she's helping these kids out. Right, we want to help out people. That's what we do. That's the human response. We want to help people. As police officers, that's our job. That's why most of us signed up to do this job, is to help people. Right. If a 6-year-old comes up and asks me for my phone, I'm going to give it to them 100% of the time, right? But just being aware that just because they may be smaller in stature or maybe a smaller individual, you could be a victim of a crime there. Does anybody have any questions related to this?
The 6 and 12-year-old were brothers?
They were. They were the same family.
Will they be charged?
The 12-year-old was charged with armed robbery and damage to property for the phone they took.
You mentioned a history here. Could you just talk a little bit about that?
So we are familiar with the family, right? And I'll leave that. But this is a behavior we're seeing, right? So the improper model behavior, a history of robberies, auto crimes, larceny from autos, things like that, with that family and some of those kids' friends. And so what we're seeing is the juveniles, and you guys are all familiar with the different things, the TikTok challenges with the Hyundais and Kias, and just auto thefts in general going on. So we're seeing a lot of our juveniles, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, involved in these types of crimes, and they're educating each other, right? So they've got the wrong role models, which is each other.
I don't want to go too much into this child's case because I don't want us to identify the child, but
Right.
You're not identifying the child.
No, absolutely not.
So then there must be a point at which you've been involved and you've decided now this child needs to be charged, or we need to take this to a next level.
Right, and we've done some. That's a great point. So we work a lot with CDCP, or Child Development Community Policing. Right, that's one of those things where if a child's been involved in some type of trauma or exposed to some type of traumatic event, We've got counselors in every division. We go out and do a home visit just to see is it safe. Of course, we're in partnership with DSS, Child Protective Services, just to make sure it's a safe environment for the child. But our Department of Juvenile Justice has a point system. We're looking at that, and I don't want to get into all that right now. But sometimes they're getting started earlier, and they don't meet that criteria for being placed into custody, so they get released back to mom. And if that becomes a cycle, then it also educates them on maybe there's not as many consequences there, and so they end up back at home with mom, and then the community is a little more concerned with coming out or just even coming forward, being victims of a crime.
I want to ask, because you have the schools that are trying to do intervention, you have community groups that are out there trying to do crime intervention, prevent stuff like this from happening, and then you have law enforcement. Everybody's working toward the same goal, but there still seems to be a disconnect. Where do you think that disconnect is whenever it comes to reaching these kids to where it will make an impact?
Well, you're 100% right. Everybody's doing their part. We're doing our part. Like I said, we've got all these programs in place at CMPD, even the community groups. They're trying. Everybody's trying, but we can't grab hold of them 24 hours a day. So really, it's got to be the family. It's got to be the community at large. We always talked about it takes a village to raise a child, but the village has to trust it, right, enough to be, if the village is scared of that child based on their criminal behavior, how willing are they be to put themselves out there? So we've got to show them, right, as a collaborative effort that we can get in front of this and we can actually get some results out of it. I mean, we've been to this child's house beforehand to do a home visit because we saw some potential, and we also saw, maybe a road they were going down that we didn't want them to go. And we tried that just to get out in front of it, and we tried to anticipate, and we see it all the time. This kid's going down the wrong road. We don't want him to go down there. All right. So we've made some really proactive efforts to try to get ahead of this. But there are a lot of kids in Charlotte, and limited resources. We do our best to kind of get in front of it.
How was the family receptive to that, or the community, when you guys tried to do that early in?
They were really receptive. I mean, the mom has several kids. She's working hard, trying to do the best as a mother, like we all are. I'm a dad. I've got a 15-year-old and 9-year-old boys, right? I got a wife, right? And we're trying to raise these kids the right way. And I find most of the time the parents are trying to do that. But if you're working hard, working a job, and your kids are at home, maybe you're a single parent, maybe you don't have those resources in place or somebody to help you out, those kids end up being by themselves for a couple hours a day, and then they get bored, and then they start looking around, look on the internet, things like that, and get educated on how to do that. If there's nobody there to supervise them, or the neighbor's not watching out for them, or their grandmother's not watching out for them, what are they going to do, right? So it's one of those things where you really just try to stay engaged and do the best you can. And yeah, the mom was really cooperative with us. She has been every single time.
You're talking about being proactive and programs. What is the most successful one right now, or what success are you seeing from those?
I don't think there's any one program you could say this program is the most successful, because if you could, we would just do that program, realistically. If we had one program that was 100% effective or 99% effective, we would just put them all in that program, and we wouldn't even be standing here. So I think it's one of those things where you try to cast a broader net and offer programs to gauge that interest, to see what they're interested in. Some of it's sports programs. We've got our PAL program, right, where we try to involve, and we have CMPD leaders like myself. I mean, I'm a basketball coach. I coach in the community. I try to give back in that way. But I can't imagine one of my 10-year-olds that I coach in basketball being involved in a crime. But is that happening? Absolutely, right? Because I'm only dealing with them a couple hours when I'm coaching them, right? So that's a really, really good question.
Were these kids, were they involved in any of these types of programs that you guys?
They have not been. We've just had the one-on-ones with them. We've tried to reach out to the mom about the ones that are a little bit older years ago, and the kids just weren't interested, unfortunately.
And with summer coming up, with students out of school, are you preparing for a potential spike in crimes involving juveniles, or what are, you touched on a little bit, but what other?
We look at our traditional hot spots as far as based on the crime and luckily we have a great crime analysis unit that does that, who provides based on this time of year, this time of day, this day of the week, even that minute detail, and provide us that as commanders in a division, and we try to allocate our resources to those times, those problems, based on that for our patrol staffing and our crime reduction units, even some of our detectives as far as that goes. Who commits this crime based on this day of the week, or this time of the year, or this type of MO based on a crime.
6 years old, I mean, that's so 6-year-old seeing this is impacted?
Well, I think he's a victim. We have to look at that 6-year-old as a victim. He's a victim of his circumstances and environment, right? What 6-year-old, I mean, we can't charge a 6-year-old in the state of North Carolina. They have to be 9. We can't, because there's no way we could prove an intent with a 6-year-old. Their brains are just so naive, right? So to look at that. So it's tragic, right? And it really, I mean, that's one of the reasons we decided to highlight the case today, just to show, this is what we're dealing with. So really good question.
2 boys.
2 boys.
Crime we keep having crazy crime happening, things like this now, 6-year-old. I mean, we don't want to throw our hands up, but what do we do? What's next?
I think we keep going. I mean, we keep fighting the good fight. We keep doing the best we do. Officers get out there every day, and they patrol, and they're getting guns off the street, and they're proactively going after people who are committing crimes, and we're doing our job at CMPD. We're putting people there. We have to present cases to the court counselors. They don't always meet the points, and that's not DJJ's fault necessarily, right? But we keep fighting the good fight and doing the work. That's what we do.
I want to ask, what is your message to the public? I mean, this is discouraging to hear. Young kids that were able to trick someone into using their phone, taking advantage of someone's goodwill. Now, if people see that, they may think, oh my gosh, I'm not ever going to try and help, especially a young kid like that walks up to me. What is your message to get past that discouragement that people may have?
That's a really great question. I'm glad you asked it, because we can do this really simply, right? Just think about that. If a kid comes up and asks you to use your phone, it's real simple. Do we have to give them the phone? No. Can we ask them, hey, what's your mom's name? Do you know her number? Hey, who can I say is calling? What do you need? Where does she live? Right? So you can have your phone help that kid out and really, like we say, provide them excellent customer service to this child here without really making yourself a victim of a crime.
How
Right.
is a 12-year-old getting this gun?
This is a BB gun,
Right.
right? So they're allowed to have a BB gun. So I'm not sure where this one came from per se, but
I gotta ask though, I mean, we've been over this for decades now, right? Like when I was a kid, these guns were a problem. They looked like real guns. We saw a kid in Ohio get shot because he was holding a gun that looks like. Why are we allowed to make BB guns that look like real guns?
I wish I had the answer to that, sir. I do not have the answer. I'm not a gun manufacturer. I will tell you, between airsoft and BB guns and being a former range master, they look more realistic now than they ever have. It's really hard to differentiate.
As an officer, how does that mean? I mean, you're a guy that's going out on calls who might see somebody waving those around and not know the difference.
Can you imagine that news story? How tragic that would be for us? Can you imagine an officer shooting a 12-year-old or a 6-year-old and the mental impact that may have on them and the community? It's tragic. It really is. So that's why we're trying to get ahead of it. That's why we're highlighting this case today, to get ahead of it and work together with you guys really to kind of make an impact.
Has the training evolved? I mean, with these guns developing the way that they have, these BB guns, how do you train to spot the difference between that and the real gun? Is there really a good way to do it from a...
It's really tough, and being involved in training since 2010, I can tell you the training has evolved more on that weapon identification, making sure it's a gun, not a cell phone. Right? We had issues with that 10 years ago, right? Now the guns are getting so defined and so detailed, looking to see, does it have a safety tip on the end? Unfortunately, there are people who design real guns that have safety tips on the end that look like fake guns. So we're dealing with that. So it really puts law enforcement in a tough position. So we're teaching them move to cover, try to make the best assessment possible, and really if there's any doubt, we don't take that shot, right? We want to teach them if there's any doubt, there's no doubt. You don't take that shot and take that extra time.
All right, I think that's it. Thank you, Kevin. So just to wrap up today, thank you to Captain Helton for joining us and for answering your questions. CMPD is proud of the work that we do with at-risk youth and with all youth here in our community. And we're proud of our Community Services Division, who provide tens of programs to divert young children away from crime, away from violence, to provide mentorship, to provide positive role models, to teach life lessons, to provide encouragement and support, and to come alongside parents in doing those. But CMPD is not the only resource in Charlotte. It can't be, it shouldn't be. We have faith-based community, large faith-based community, churches. We have neighborhood support groups. We have schools, the entire Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system and surrounding. We have nonprofits, folks who volunteer their time to engage with at-risk youth, to teach them and provide for them good, positive role models. So we call upon all of the stakeholders in our community. We call upon all of the members in our community, whether you're a parent or not, to provide a positive role model and to provide a positive example for all of the youth in our neighborhoods. And parents, we encourage you to not wait until it's too late. We encourage you to reach out to any one or multiple of those resources, and we encourage you to do it early. We encourage you to do it now. So yes, as summer quickly approaches, as school is about to let out, we want you to be thinking about these things. We have programs. We encourage you to reach out to us if you have questions about those, to our community services divisions, so that we can get kids in these programs and so that they don't sit idly by all summer up to no good. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.